Dad, look at that bright, shiny star. Do you think it's Mom watching us from heaven?
Don't be ridiculous, Amara. It's just the North Star. Stars are just giant balls of hot air and matter. Come, it's time for bed.
I felt so disappointed as I walked away from the telescope. I really wanted to believe it was Mom. Dad always got so weird whenever I brought her up. It seemed like he never wanted to talk about her. My name is Amara, and people say I'm a child prodigy. My dad is a scientist, and ever since I was a kid, I've heard him say that science is the most important thing in life. And I decided that I would become a physicist like him one day. But that day came sooner than anyone had expected. You see, my teachers in school soon discovered that I was a genius, and I was bumped up quite a few grades. I was done with high school by the time I was 10 years old. By 13, I'd graduated from college, and by 16, I'd gotten my PhD in astrophysics. Soon enough, I was hired as a professor at a university where all the students were older than me. Once I entered the lecture room, and one of my students looked at me pitifully.
Are you lost, kiddo? You want some help?
Yeah, I want you to sit there and be quiet.
What?
Just take a seat. I'm your professor.
Hey, don't lie, you idiot. That's not funny. It's disrespectful.
Shut up and get lost before I make you regret the moment you saw me. The guy's face turned red and he started yelling at me.
Don't you have some respect for adults, kid? Your mama didn't raise you well, did she?
When he mentioned my mom, I got mad. Don't mention her. Don't talk like this about her, you good-for-nothing moron. And I left the room. Minutes later, I returned with the head of the department, and he introduced me to the students. Their jaws dropped open and the room was awkwardly silent. That guy looked shocked. He left and I never saw him again. I started teaching, and students really liked me and my teaching style. Even though I was really proud of everything I'd achieved so young, I sometimes envied other kids who seemed to be having fun with their family and friends. Dad was always too busy, and so was I. And I had no friends my age, except Tanya, my next-door neighbor. She was into fashion, and I never understood what she was talking about. Once, she came and said, "Amara, I feel down. I just broke up with my boyfriend." "But you broke up with him last week, no?" "Oh no, not Mike. Today I broke up with James, and tomorrow I'll dump Marcos. But after he brings me dinner. You know, food is every girl's weakness." Oh God, this girl. But speaking about weakness, one day as I was getting ready to get to work, I saw the most awful tweet on my phone that changed my life forever. Joan Feynman had died. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I knew she was 93 years old, but she was a pioneer in astrophysics and my personal heroine. I was so devastated that I could barely focus on my lessons that day. That evening, Dad asked me what was wrong. I told him I was really shaken by my idol's death.
Oh, that's so pathetic, Amara. To feel sad about someone's death? That's just so silly. I thought you were more mature than this.
Dad, she's my role model.
I can't believe you're like this. You're too emotional to be a real scientist. So disappointing.
I bit my tongue and didn't tell him that NASA had offered me a position on the International Space Station. I just went into my room. I decided to watch a documentary instead. It was about how single women who don't have boyfriends live shorter lives than those who get married. It seemed silly at first, but then they presented hard scientific evidence, and I was convinced. I did not want to die young. And then I got a brilliant idea. I should have a boyfriend. It's not like I was dying to have a boyfriend. I just really needed to test out this theory. When I walked downstairs for breakfast, I made an announcement. "Dad, what do you think about me having a boyfriend?" My dad almost dropped his fork into the food he was eating.
A boyfriend? Why?
"I'm just a human with emotions, Dad. I deserve to love and be loved."
What does that even mean? You're too young to have a boyfriend.
Oh, weren't I young when you made me work as a professor?
That's something else. It's because you're the smartest kid I've ever seen.
Oh, so I'm smart to teach and not smart enough to have a boyfriend.
Romance is for dumb people only.
Oh, Dad, I made my decision. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm just letting you know.
I can't believe you're doing this. You're like animals now, like a monkey.
Oh, I don't mind being a monkey. I just want to live longer.
What are you talking about?
Nothing, Dad. You won't get it. Dad didn't look pleased at all, but he didn't say anything else. We ate in silence and I left for work. I had to meet lots of guys. I reached home and called my friend Tanya. "I want to have a boyfriend."
What? Is this a prank?
"Oh, come on, Tanya. I'm just a girl like you.
You are?
Tanya, I'm serious. I need your help.
Okay. You want one?
One what?
One boyfriend or more?
Oh, no. I would just like to start with one, please.
But what did your dad say about this?
Oh, him? He's evil. Trust me. He doesn't want me to have a life. But I'm done listening to him. Tanya then downloaded a bunch of dating apps on my phone. I worked on my profile and put up my best picture that showed me winning the government grant last year for special research. I didn't have a single request in days. What's wrong, Tanya? Don't guys like smart girls?
Oh, poor Amara.
Just come with me. I had no idea about the torture waiting for me there. I hated shopping, and she dragged me through stores, picking out short pink skirts and Hello Kitty tops. But Tanya, no one would take me seriously at work if I wore this stuff. And no one is going to send you a request on the app if you have a picture of yourself in a lab coat. Just try it on. It's a really cute look. She took me to the salon next for some extremely painful procedures. I was being attacked by thread and wax and hair tongs, after which those women proceeded to slap makeup onto my face. Next, Tanya took some pictures for me and uploaded them onto the app. When I looked at the dating profile, I couldn't recognize the face I saw. I shook my head and went along with it. Apparently, Tanya was onto something because soon enough my phone was buzzing with notifications. It had worked. The next day, I went dressed exactly as Tanya had taught me. As I was walking out the door, Dad looked like he was about to have a fit. The first boy said I didn't look anything like the picture on my profile, and I needed to learn how to apply makeup better. The second one didn't even let me get a word in. He just kept talking about his bodybuilding and kept asking me to touch his biceps. Boy number 3 was just really angry about everything and shouted at the waiter for not giving him ketchup with his fries. The fourth one just sat silently for 30 minutes before he said he had a session with his therapist, and he just left me to pay the bill. In 3 days, I had 14 dates, and it was clear something wasn't working. I needed to meet people who I had something in common with. I decided to make a list of all my favorite science and cultural clubs and museums, and from the next day, I attended every meeting and party. I went to classical concerts and painting exhibitions and tried to talk to every boy I could find. I finally met a guy who seemed really interesting. Sam. We spent 3 evenings discussing books, physics, and our favorite insects. Then on the 4th date, I noticed his phone ringing when he was in the bathroom. We were in a quiet cafe and the loud trilling made everyone glare in my direction. I quickly picked up the phone and said, "Sam's phone, who's calling?" The answer on the other end made me almost drop the phone.
His girlfriend. Who are you?
I was shocked and threw it to Sam, who had just come back to the table. When he saw who it was, he looked at me speechlessly, and I just walked out. I was devastated. I went back home and clutched onto my NASA acceptance letter and sobbed. I sobbed because all boys seemed like jerks, but after a day of staying in bed, I decided I needed to continue with my experiment. I had to find someone single. I booked an appointment with the internet's finest matchmaker and set off to meet them. When I told them all my details, they said my IQ was too high and they didn't have anyone who could be matched with me. Fed up and angry, I stomped home. My dad, who had been watching all these changes silently, stopped me that day.
Amara, what has gotten into you? Why are you behaving like such a stupid person?
Something inside me snapped, and I yelled at him. You never talk about Mom and her death. You never once asked me how I felt when she left us. You mocked me when I told you I felt sad over my idol's death. I'm really scared, and I'm just doing all of this because I don't want to end up alone. And with that, I just stormed off to my room in tears, and Dad didn't follow. When I came down the next day, my father had made my favorite pancakes. That surprised me. He gave me some coffee and sat me down. I was shocked to see him clutching a picture of Mom.
Your mom was the love of my life. Her death devastated me, and no science or logic can explain that pain, so I don't talk about it. I don't know how to.
I stared at my father. I couldn't believe he was talking about his feelings.
I'm sorry that I was selfish and never let you express or process your emotions. You were only a kid, and it's your loss too. And the only reason to be with someone is because they're your soulmate, not some stupid study.
A tear slid down my cheek. I told Dad about the NASA mission, and he hugged me in delight. I emailed NASA back the next day and accepted their offer. I flew to the training session and finished my lessons. In 3 months, I was on the International Space Station. I couldn't believe I was in space. I looked at the stars around me and felt closer to my mother than ever before. It was beautiful. I stared at Earth in the distance and felt a surge of happiness. I felt free. 2 months later, I was back on Earth, and I got into the plane to go back home. The seat next to me was empty, and then I heard a voice. "Hey, Amara." I turned and saw a man with spectacles and a kind smile. Peter? It was my old school friend Peter, who had left school early. We laughed and talked about old memories. At the end of the flight, he asked me for my number. "Amara, would it be okay if I asked you out sometime? I always had a crush on you." I smiled and said yes.
I was born on the 1st of January at exactly 12 a.m. Mom says I was looking directly at her and smiled the first time she held me. I was sitting up by the time I was 4 months, walking when I was only 7 months, and talking by the time I was 10 months old. Growing up, I heard people telling my parents that I was special, but I always felt like I wasn't smart enough. That's why I read a new book every day. By the time I was 10 years old, I'd read everything from Shakespeare to Stephen Hawking. Dad, who was a brilliant scientist, always challenged me to do more. But Mom would take my books away at 10 p.m. sharp and switched off the lights. I'd sometimes read by torchlight after she left. But things got out of hand sometimes. I became obsessed with being the best at everything, which is why, in the 8th grade, I couldn't believe it when I found out I was the runner-up in the science fair. I tried smiling for the camera, but I felt so disappointed in myself that I just burst into tears and ran off the stage. As we walked out of the school, Mom said, "What was that all about? You're still second best, and that's amazing." Dad looked over at her. "There's no such thing as second best. You're either the best or you're not." I was sure Dad was right. Or at least, that's what he says. Yeah, I'm such a loser. Why can't I be smarter? As I sulked in the car on the drive home, Mom pulled over in front of my favorite ice cream place. "Well, I think being second deserves some celebration. Why don't you go get your favorite sundae, honey?" I grinned reluctantly and got out. Just then, I stepped right into an ice cream cone melting on the footpath. I slipped and went flying in the air, landing on the ground with a thud. My head hit the hard concrete and everything went black. Hi, I'm Eleanor, and this is the crazy story of how I went into a coma and woke up a genius. Before I continue, click like and subscribe. As soon as I opened my eyes, Mom hugged me and started crying, while Dad quickly called the doctor. Apparently, I'd been unconscious for 3 days. After examining me, the doctor said I seemed perfectly fine and could go home, but I just felt different. "Honey, is everything okay? You seem a bit lost." "Oh yeah, nothing. I was just thinking about string theory." "String theory?" "Yeah. I was just thinking that if we express the string theory in 11 dimensions, it leads us to Einstein's relativity equations. Isn't that really cool?" Everybody looked at me like I'd gone crazy. The doctor said I was probably babbling because of the blow to my head. "Babbling? What she said makes complete sense. How do you know that, Eleanor?" "Oh, I don't know. I just know." "Mom, can we buy some ice cream on the way back home?" The next day at lunch, as I looked for a place to sit, I found my math teacher and another professor arguing over something. "I'm telling you, I've tried every calculus method in the book. I don't know how to integrate x squared times e to the minus x." Have you tried differentiation under the integral sign?" The two turned to look at me in shock. "That's brilliant! Do you actually know how to use this technique, Eleanor?" "I can give it a try." And with that, I joined their table and started solving the problem. When I was done, the two teachers stared at me with their mouths open. Next thing I knew, my parents were called to the principal's office, and the math teacher was going on and on about how gifted I was. After a series of tests, we found out that I had an IQ of 160. the same as Albert Einstein's. I was immediately bumped up a few grades. Becoming a genius was like turning into a whole new person overnight. I only had to read something once, and I understood it perfectly. Complex physics concepts and math theorems just all started making sense, and I was fascinated by everything I was learning. I could solve all sorts of problems at warp speed, and it felt amazing. One day, the guidance counselor told my parents to apply to a great school for gifted students in Finland. I applied and was accepted within a week on full scholarship. And before I knew it, I was flying over to Finland. My mouth dropped open as the cab drove up to the huge castle-like school building. Waiting at the main entrance was a jolly-looking man who smiled at me as I stepped out.
Well, it's nice to finally meet the little genius from Chicago. I'm the principal, Mr. Aaron, and we're very excited to have you here. An IQ of 160? Amazing!
He was really kind and welcoming. The next day, as I went to my first class, I noticed the other kids looking at me curiously, but there was one girl who did not look happy to see me. I instantly recognized her as the mean girl of the class. Just then, the math teacher walked in with the principal right behind him, who quickly slipped to the back of the classroom. The teacher announced an oral quiz, and I was on the edge of my seat. Turns out, things weren't that easy in a class where everyone was a genius. As the questions got harder, though, it was clear that my main competitor was the mean girl, Janice. We were both neck to neck with our scores.
Well done, girls. Now here's a tough one to break the tie. Give me a number that when divided by the product of its digits, the quotient is 3. And if you were to add 18 to this number, the digits would be inverted.
There was a short pause. 24.
And we have a winner!
As the class broke into applause, I turned back to see the principal beaming at me. But Janice looked like she wanted to eat me alive. Later that day in the cafeteria, I joined some kids from my class and was having a really good time when suddenly Janice came over and slammed down her tray. So, just because you got one more question right, you think you're the smartest girl in the universe now? I didn't even say, well, you're not. And I challenge you to a game of speed chess. Challenge accepted. She instantly set up a chessboard at the lunch table, and before I knew it, we were in the middle of a really intense match, with half the school watching us. After Janice made another move, she looked at me, and I smiled. You lose.
What? The game isn't over yet?
Yeah, it is. My knight to e7, your king to h8, bishop blocks, queen to h5. Checkmate. I could see her working out the moves in her head, and then suddenly, she screamed and knocked the board right off the table. As she stormed off angrily, a girl leaned in and whispered, "She's the principal's daughter. I wouldn't mess with her if I were you." A few weeks had gone by, and I was loving everything here, except for the death glares I kept getting from Janice. One evening, I was called into the principal's office. When I got close to the door, I heard voices from inside. "But Daddy, I want to take a shot at it too. I have an IQ of 140. Why do you treat me like I'm dumb?"
Because you're not the best. The only place that matters is the #1 spot. Now stop wasting my time and go away.
Just then, the door burst open, and Janice stormed out, crying. She just looked at me and spat out, "I hate you," and went running down the hallway. When I walked into the office, the principal greeted me with his usual broad smile.
Eleanor, I have an amazing opportunity for you. There's a famous mathematical problem that's gone unsolved for decades. It has $1 million prize for the person who solves it. I really believe that could be you. Wouldn't you love that? You can use my private study to work in peace, and you can have anything you want. You just name it.
I'd really love some Doritos.
I have no idea what those are, but I will search all of Finland and get them for you. You just work on this and make us proud.
I pored over the problem for days, barely leaving the study. I became obsessed. I started missing my classes, but the principal said I didn't have to worry about that right now. One night, I'd fallen asleep at the desk when I woke up with a start. Of course! I couldn't believe the answer had been in front of me all this time. The next morning, I was up early waiting for the principal outside his office. I think I solved it! He settled in his chair, and as his eyes scanned the pages, they grew wider. And 10 minutes later, he looked up at me in shock.
Unbelievable! I really think you've done it.
Then suddenly, I saw an expression on his face I never seen before.
Now, get out of my office, please.
Wait, what? Aren't we going to submit the solution, sir?
Oh yes, but not we. Just me. What does a little girl like you need $1 million and all that credit for?
Oh my god! You're an evil jerk! You can't steal my work!
I can! Watch me!
And with that, he shoved me out of the office and slammed the door in my face. I couldn't believe he'd made such a fool out of me with his nice guy act. That evening, as I paced my room furiously thinking about what to do, Janice suddenly walked in. What do you want? I know what he did, Eleanor. I know what he's really like. We can't let him get away with this. For the first time, I realized we were a lot alike. We both just wanted to be the best, and our dads had always made us believe we just weren't smart enough. I'm listening. A few days later, the principal was planning to make a presentation in front of his colleagues and board members. Janice and I snuck into the conference room as everyone gathered there. The principal stepped up in front of the mic.
Before I start, I just want to say that I'm so excited to present the solution to a problem that has baffled so many brilliant minds. This will do wonders for the reputation of our school.
With that, he switched on the projector. Everybody stared at it, looking unamused, while Janice and I nearly burst out laughing. Mr. Aaron looked at the slide in horror and quickly shut the laptop off.
Clearly, there's been some mistake here. No matter. Let me distribute copies of my solution.
As everyone opened up the pages, they stared at him angrily.
Is this some kind of joke, Mr. Aaron? Why are you wasting our time?
And with that, everyone got up and started leaving, looking really displeased. When the room was empty, we came out of our hiding place, and the principal turned purple.
You stole my paper and changed the slides.
No, you stole my paper, and we just took it back. And it's already on its way to be reviewed by the country's mathematics board under my name. And he screamed in rage. Janice and I walked out arm in arm. At the door, Janice turned around. Daddy, put a password on your laptop next time. I know your IQ is only 126, but that was kind of dumb, even for you. Fast forward a few weeks, and I was invited to a ceremony in Belgium to receive my prize for solving one of the greatest math problems of our times. Mr. Aaron quit and left, and no one knows where he is now. I'm graduating school next month and heading off to university soon. With the prize money, I have big plans to open a school where all sorts of kids feel valued. Janice and I have become really good friends, and I sometimes let her beat me at chess.
Tiptoed into the lounge. I nearly jumped out of my skin when I heard a voice. You're gonna be in so much trouble. It was my annoying older sister Natalia sitting in a corner and recording a makeup tutorial. Listen, you can't tell Aunt I came so late. She'll make me do the dishes and laundry for a month. I might keep your secret if you do my math homework for the rest of the school year. Just then, my eyes fell on the mound of honey cakes on the table and my stomach growled. Don't even think about touching these. Aunt wants to sell them at the farmer's market. We came to live with our miserable Aunt Ursula after our parents passed away in an accident a few years ago, and she treated us like we were her servants. I was really hungry, so I just grabbed one and popped the whole thing into my mouth. Just then, my aunt suddenly showed up and yelled, "That's it! I'm sick of breaking my back looking after you girls. I'm sending you off to foster care." We looked at her in horror. Going to foster care meant we'd be sent off to different families. As Aunt stormed off and we heard her making a call, I got a flying shoe on my head. Ow! Oh, I forgot to tell you about my third sister, Tanya. The sleepyhead had been snoring in front of the fireplace, but she was wide awake now and glaring at me. "This is all your fault, Marina. Go tell her you're sorry. I'm not living away from you guys." Natalia and I ran to hug her, and I promised I'd make everything okay. Just then, we heard loud knocking on the door. Aunt came waddling out to open it, and she let out a loud gasp. Standing in the doorway was a huge man with a beard. His voice boomed in the small room. "Did you really think you could send them off and keep taking the money I give you for their care and I wouldn't even know? Girls, pack your things. You're coming with me." Hi, my name is Marina, and I'm from Russia. My life turned around when Mom's eccentric brother, who I never even knew existed, took away me and my sisters to live in his old mansion. But it gets even crazier from here. Before I continue, click like and subscribe. The next few weeks living with Uncle Ivan was like a dream. He got all three of us into the best school in town right away. A few days later at dinner, while Natalia and I were busy arguing over something, Tanya suddenly said, guys, is Uncle Ivan okay? We looked at him and saw that he sat slumped in his chair. Oh, no. Natalia poked him, but there was no response. I bent down to check his pupils, and just then he yelled, "Do svidaniya!" We all screamed and nearly fell back in shock. He glared at us. Can't a man take a nap in his own house? Uncle Ivan startled us again by suddenly banging his goblet on the table. I've just decided something. I want to give you $1 million. For a few seconds, we stared at him with our mouths open, and then we started hugging each other in delight. To one of you. We froze in our spots. Wait, what? Well, if it's only one of us, of course it should be me. I'm the oldest, and I'm running a business already. You know, my beauty blog.
Your business is just Dumbos watching another Dumbo putting on makeup. I'm going to be a big shot singer one day, so I'll need that money for my album. Guys, come on, $1 million is a lot of money. We can share it. But the other two weren't even listening to me. How dare you call me a Dumbo, you little bug? I'm 11 and I can kick your butt. And before I knew it, they were attacking one another while I was trying to break it up. Uncle got up and looked at us with sad eyes. I will make my decision in 3 days. And with that, he walked off. The next morning, when I peeked into Natalia and Tanya's rooms and didn't find them there, I knew exactly where they'd be. And sure enough, I found them standing outside Uncle's bedroom with breakfast trays loaded with his favorite foods. Seriously, guys, we're family. I swear if I find the money, I'll happily split it with you two. Well, I wouldn't do that for you. Yeah, me neither. It's gonna be all mine. And with that, Tanya knocked on the door loudly, but there was no reply. We opened the door, and to our surprise, the bed was perfectly made and the room was empty. Just then, I caught sight of a note on his pillow and ran forward to pick it up. A fat lady with no eyebrows sitting in a frame, smiling strangely at the world. Everyone knows her name. P.S. I had to go somewhere. What on earth is he talking about? The woman he's describing sounds like Aunt Ursula. I'm not going back to her, not even for $1 million. Later that night, when I was in bed, I was still thinking about the strange poem when I suddenly sat up straight. Of course that's what Uncle meant. I quickly put on my nightgown and rushed downstairs. I crept quietly into Uncle's study and switched on my phone's flashlight. I knew I'd seen it here, the Mona Lisa hanging on the wall. I stared at the painting for a while, wondering what I was supposed to do now. Then I took it off the wall and flipped it over. I gasped. Taped to one corner was a small bronze key. I couldn't wait to tell the others. And then suddenly, I felt a hand around my ankle. Ah! I jumped back in fright and fell on the floor. And then someone popped up from behind the couch. Oh, hi, Marina. I thought it was Natalia bringing me food. Oh my God, how could it possibly be? It was Petrov, the hockey team captain at my old school and my biggest crush. What on earth are you doing here? Just then, the door burst open and she walked in with a tray of snacks. She looked shocked to see me, then quickly smiled. Oh, I see you've met my boyfriend. We were really missing each other, so he decided to pay me a visit. I couldn't believe my own sister would do this to me. She knew how much I liked him, and she'd been dating him behind my back. Just then, Tanya came running in, saying she'd heard my screams. She didn't even look surprised to see Petrov. You knew he was here too? Yeah, I saw Natalia sneaking him in a few nights ago. Petrov, it's really uncool to eat someone's chocolates without asking, man. Petrov stared at her like she was crazy. What are you talking about? I didn't eat your stuff. Well, one of you is lying then because they were in the fridge this morning. Who ate them, ghosts? Just then, the study door behind us slammed shut and we all turned around startled. And then we heard a key turn in the lock. I ran towards the door and pulled the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Who could possibly have locked us inside? Petrov started banging on the door and screaming like a maniac. Help! This house is haunted! I don't want to die here! Jeez, Petrov, you're gonna wake up all the ghosts. He looked even more horrified, and Natalia kicked Tanya before taking him aside and calming him down. Just seeing the two of them sitting so close made my blood boil. And now we were just stuck here and would have to wait for Uncle to let us out. As we all sat there sulking quietly, Natalia suggested that we could play a game to pass the time. Oh, I have a great game in mind. It's called Reflection. I picked the antique mirror from Uncle's desk and shoved it in her face. Mirror, mirror in my hands, who's the worst sister in all the lands? OMG, loser, get over it.
Petrov looked really confused and asked what was going on. Natalia just said, "Oh, nothing." And then she grabbed him by the collar and started kissing him in front of me. Oh, my eyes, my eyes! Tanya ran off to the other end of the room and refused to come back. She snuggled into a big armchair, and after a few minutes we could hear her loud snoring. Natalia opened a packet of crisps for herself and Petrov and glared at me. Don't even think about it. Also, why were you snooping around at night? As if I'd tell you. When Petrov asked us what we were fighting about, Natalia spilled out everything about how Uncle was leaving one of us $1 million. If you're keeping any secrets from me, Marina, I'll find out. Come on, babe, I'm so tired. And with that, she took Petrov's hands and they both snuggled onto the couch. I put my fingers in my ears to stop hearing their kissing and giggling sounds. This was just the worst night ever. Finally, after ages, it seemed like they'd fallen asleep. I was still wide awake and my stomach rumbled loudly. A few minutes later, someone shook me by the shoulder. I turned around to see it was Petrov, and he'd brought me some food. We stayed up for hours talking, and I was having the best time. You know something, Marina? I think you're the smartest, and you'll win the money. His face was really close to mine, and he was leaning in to kiss me. Just then, we heard Natalia stir, and he quickly ran off to her. A little while later, I crawled over to the Mona Lisa painting on the floor and found a key on the back. I clutched it tight and fell asleep. I woke up the next morning, and to my shock, the door was unlocked and wide open. I woke the others up, and everyone was so excited we were free. Just as I was walking out, I heard Natalia say, "Hey, why is this painting on the floor?" "Oh, I saw Marina take it off last night. There was something behind it." And before I knew it, Natalia had jumped across the room and pinned me to the ground. "Tell me what you found, you witch!" I tried to push her off me, but she was crazy strong. As we wrestled on the floor, the key slipped out of my hands and Tanya ran to pick it up. "Both of you, shut up!" As we sat panting and staring daggers at one another, Tanya said that there was something written on the key. Together in Paris. We had no idea what that was about and decided we'd come back from school and figure it out together. I went to Uncle's room and slipped the key into a drawer. During the first recess, I snuck out of the school and went back home as fast as I could. I crept into Uncle's room and headed straight for the drawer, to find it empty. What? Just then, I saw the curtain move a little. I crept up to it slowly and pulled it back to see Petrov behind it. "What are you doing here, and where's my key?" I saw you with it, and I just wanted to help solve the mystery for you. You're so smart. I really wanted you to think I'm smart too." He suddenly took my hand and pulled me close. "I like you, Marina, a lot. Let's figure this thing out and get out of here with the $1 million. We could go anywhere, just you and me." Just as he was about to pull me in for a kiss, I pushed him away. "Seriously? You were just making out with my sister this morning. You're such a cheater, and I'm no idiot. Give me the key, Petrov, now!" Suddenly, Petrov pushed me aside and made a dash towards the door. He bumped into a small table and knocked everything over. I jumped towards him and managed to tackle him to the ground. The small key flew out of his hand and went skidding across the floor and landed at Natalia's feet. She looked livid. "Oh, so you were going to just take my money and run off with my sister?" He crawled up to her on his knees. "Don't be silly, babe. I didn't mean a word of that. I was just doing this for the two of us." "You mean the three of us?" Tanya and I stared at her in shock, except Petrov, who just looked stupidly confused. "It's not some riddle, idiot. I'm pregnant and you're going to be a daddy." He stared up at her in horror for a second, then ran out of the room screaming. We heard the huge main door slam shut. I ran to Natalia and hugged her. "I had no idea. Petrov's such a jerk. But don't worry, we will be really good aunts, and She pushed me off. "Ew, I'm not dumb enough to get pregnant. That was just to get rid of him." Just then, Tanya, who was picking up the things Petrov had knocked over, suddenly screamed, "Look, girls, look what this says!" She was holding a beautiful little music box in her hands, and there was a small carving on the lid, "Together in Paris." I placed the box on the table and we all gathered around as I turned the key. The lid slowly opened and we gasped in delight as we saw two figurines dancing to the tinkly music. There was a tiny compartment underneath and a small note tucked away, 271287. For a moment we just stared at the paper when Natalia suddenly gasped. "These numbers! This is Mom's birthday!" She was right. But what could Uncle possibly mean by this? I have no idea, girls, but Uncle said we only had 3 days, so we have to put our heads together and figure it out soon. Later that night, as I tossed around in bed, I suddenly heard a loud thump from downstairs. I froze for a minute, then quickly crept out of bed and tiptoed down with a baseball bat. I couldn't see anyone around, and just as I was about to turn away, something on the floor caught my eye. Muddy shoe prints. We definitely had an intruder in the house. I followed the shoe prints down the corridors that led to the eastern wing of the house. I'd never been here before. Suddenly, they faded away, and I looked up to see a door at the end of the hall. Holding my breath, I slowly opened it. There was no one inside, but it was the oddest room I'd ever seen. It seemed like a museum of forgotten things, and there were hundreds of clocks on the walls of all shapes and sizes, ticking away and all telling the wrong time. And in one corner was a shiny bronze safe. The minute I saw it, I had a light bulb moment. Of course that's what the numbers were. The combination to a safe. With trembling hands, I entered the numbers and heard a small click. I opened it and squealed when I saw what was inside. Stacks of money. It definitely looked like $1 million. Were you going to keep this for yourself? I turned around to see Natalia and Tanya standing behind me. Of course not. How could you even think that? Come, let's split it right now. There's plenty for us all. Just then, the door burst open and we turned around to see Uncle Ivan beaming in the doorway. Uncle, you're back!
I was here all along. Who do you think locked you up when you girls were being so noisy? I just wanted to see how you would play my game. Marina, you really know what family is all about. Good girl. You get to keep all the money.
The other two looked horrified. I turned to Uncle and smiled. Thank you, Uncle, but I couldn't. It'll make me happier to share it with my sisters.
I knew you wouldn't. Now only time will tell if your sisters deserve their share.
Yes, we deserve it. We'll prove it. We'll be so good to each other. I laughed and put my arms through theirs. Let's divide it and go shopping tomorrow, shall we?